I would like to know your position on the use of the money from the city light lease. There's a lot of speculation. Another question I like, are you going to have, if you're elected mayor, are you going to have the opportunity to decide that, or is our president going to influence that? Hopefully that decision won't be made until after the election.
Let's start down here with the Democrats, since they have had a few minutes to go here.
Well, thank you for your question. I find that a very important question. I personally would save it for a while because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Right now, the federal government has mandated to us that we need a $30 million ultraviolet disinfection system for our drinking water, and that's not accounted for because that's just come up. So I would like to just let it set for a while and use it for emergencies that come up and help to bring jobs here. And I personally think it's probably going to be a non-issue because the mayor will probably try to get rid of the whole thing before his term is up. And so Councilwoman Brown, you're going to have to be double alert here.
I feel the same way about the $77 million. I think it should all be put into a savings account to draw some interest. We could live on that savings account for many, many years. $77 million would draw up about $500,000 a year if it's put in the right savings account or in the right bank. I would also like to see this city fix up some of our neighborhoods. I mean, it's ridiculous to have visitors come to Fort Wayne and see houses that are boarded up and abandoned. 21 years some of these houses have been this way. I'm talking about West Central, and every neighborhood in this city has abandoned, boarded up houses, and it's ridiculous. When we have visitors come to this city, we need better transportation. The shuttle buses at the Hilton will only take you to Jefferson Point and not to Glenbrook Mall. The shuttle buses at the Courtyard Bar Marriott won't take you nowhere unless you ask. We need better communication for everybody in this city, including the visitors to our city.
I am concerned what the mayor is going to do with the money, and although I am on city council now and I can dig my heels in and not vote to spend it between now and the election, the problem will be if I can convince 5 people or 4 other people on council. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that, frankly, depending on what the project is. I've gone to the Legacy Task Force meetings, and it's very clear that he is encouraging lots of input on how to spend it, not how to save it. But my plan for the money is to save it. That $30 million ultraviolet disinfection project that city utilities is going to have to fund is an example of how we could use that money. I would put it in what we call a bond bank or an internal revolving loan fund. The city's rainy day fund where we would save it. City utilities, for example, could borrow the $30 million or a portion of that from the $38 million we have now, and then we get the rest over 15 years. They could borrow from that to help pay for that without having to bond so much, because of course we don't have $30 million right now to pay for that project. And then over time city utilities would pay back into that fund. They'd have to budget carefully, so they'd have to make cuts just as you would if you had to put a new roof on your house. Then you have to be lean the next year in other areas in your household budget. That's what the city needs to do going forward. And so we would always be replenishing that fund, and it would be there for future generations. If we just use it to pay down debt, all of our debt has prepayment penalties. We'll be just wasting our money if we used it just for that.
Well, I agree that we should not spend it, that it should be invested. And let's just talk about where it is today. We have $38 million sitting in stocks, bonds, perhaps some municipal bonds. The truth is, I don't know that any of us in this room know where this money is invested. You know, what we do know is we're at market risk. And so what I've suggested is that we invest this in projects in this way. You know, we have a goal or a plan to do $100 million of new projects across our city. 70 million of that will be financed by the banks. We would lend $15 million. That would give us a total of $85 million to lend to private investors who right now do not come and invest their money in Fort Wayne. So with $15 million of private investment, here's the 4 things we get as a city. We get to make a return on our initial loan between 5 and 7%. We get to have people employed in a down economy as they build these projects out by these private investors. We get to have an improved quality of life, and we get a new $100 million tax base that we get to make above and beyond the 5 to 7%. And within 3 to 5 years, we'll get this money back when it's sold to a REIT or it's refinanced. We'll get our money back, and then it can go back into whatever investments we have where it is today currently. This is the way, to me, that you become a city on the move, and this is the way that you enhance your quality of life so that you can attract and retain talent and bring people to Fort Wayne so that we can grow businesses and grow our economy and grow our tax base.
Okay, I'd like to know about where we actually got the money. We actually sold our parts of City Light to I&M. So we gotta think about how that money went. We actually had it for a while, but we actually sold it. So we actually should be saving this money, of course. That would be definitely a good idea. But having a little bit of an experiment on about like $10 million for buying into franchise and actually totally own companies and hire people, and they guaranteed by the city to keep their jobs. And if it doesn't work, we could always sell these companies for a profit.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to kind of point out first, one of the things that the mayor seems to be skipping over and the legacy task force are skipping over is the fact that this money is not ours to spend or not spend at this point. The state still has to approve the agreement, and that is far from a done deal. So it reminds me of people who've heard that they might get an inheritance or they might win the lottery, and it's burning a hole in their pocket before they even have it. I think that the best thing we can do is, as an overall redirection of the priorities of city government, we need to start paying down the debt. I'm appalled if it is true, which I don't believe that it is, but if it is true that all of our bonds have prepayment penalties, who agreed to that? I sat on county council for 8 years. That was one of the first things we asked. We required that none of the bonds have prepayment penalties. That's irresponsible. That's like, say, signing a mortgage or any kind of loan with prepayment penalties, or having a credit card payment with prepayment penalties. Really? That is irresponsible. Pay down the debt. Even if there is a prepayment penalty, you are still going to save more. You could not possibly earn more in interest over the next 10 years than you could save in interest on those payments. I'll use an example, the parking garage. The city approved a lease back in 2001, a 20-year loan for their parking garage, $1.7 million. And it sounds like a lot of money until you figure out that that's only 1.4% of the city's budget. They could have paid for that in cash and should have paid for that in cash. It's like a family of making $40,000 putting out a 20-year loan for a television set of $500. Again, it's worse than rent to own in my mind. And over the 20 years of that loan amount, they're going to spend $1 million in interest on the original $1.7 million bond. It's irresponsible. When we start paying down debt and living on a cash basis, we will make better decisions. And yes, it will be painful at first because that is a major turning around of that Titanic that is city government right now. But when we get our priorities back in line, we will have the money available to do projects on an annual basis. That's how paying down debt works. You have the cash available that was going to principal and interest payments. Thank you.
There is a feeding frenzy amongst the media in Fort Wayne about how to spend the light lease money. As you've heard from all of the other people on here, we shouldn't be spending that money. We should save it. We need to invest it and get as much off it as we possibly can and to save it for a rainy day. We do not need to spend that money. Thank you.